Howdy gamers, I'm bringing you another video review today, this time of the latest in the Legend of Zelda series, Skyward Sword for the Wii. This latest adventure of Link takes place in Skyloft, a floating island in the sky sent above the clouds generations ago by a goddess to protect the Hylians from the evil on the surface. The Hylians adapted to their new environment rather well and established their own little world that in time forgot the surface even existed. One of their most prominent adaptations to the new environment was the development of a symbiotic relationship with giant birds, particularly the Knights of Skyloft, who keep the floating city safe, as well as catch the occasional klutz who stumbles off the edge. This time around, Link is one of the knights in training, which is an expected story setup. Zelda herself, however, has a different background. Rather than the Princess of Hyrule, Zelda is the daughter of Headmaster Gaepora, the stand-in for the owl guide Kaepora Gaebora. A childhood friend with a penchant for shoving Link off ledges, the two have a close relationship that has been cultivated over their lives rather than being strangers that meet in the midst of crisis. Make no mistake, though, this is The Legend of Zelda, so crisis occurs, and Zelda goes missing, leaving it up to Link to find her. Assisting in his search is Fi, an apparently artificial life form that lives within the Goddess Sword, a mystic blade left behind by the goddess who lifted Skyloft above the clouds, who can provide Link with a path to the surface to track down Zelda, meeting a variety of new and interesting races along the way. I'm gonna say something heretical here. I don't think Skyward Sword is that good. While not a horrible game, the CDI iterations claim that distinction.
No! Not into the pit! It burns!
I feel like this was a lazy effort from Nintendo. Zelda traditionally reuses elements from prior entries and expands upon them, that's sort of the Zelda thing, but Skyward Sword didn't really expand. Rather, they blended Wind Waker with Twilight Princess and forgot to innovate in any meaningful way along the way. Few of the weapons do anything new or interesting, and the world feels small and chopped up rather than vast and sprawling, particularly since you revisit the few locales time and time again. And I cannot express enough how much I despise the motion controls. Flailing around isn't fun, and flailing around impotently because the Wii doesn't register that I'm trying to stab instead of slash makes me want to shut the machine off and just play something else. The new musical instrument this time around, the Goddess Harp, is a spectacular failure. With the various ocarinas, you pressed buttons to correspond to different notes. You conducted the wind with the Wind Waker by pressing the control stick in the appropriate directions. The Goddess Harp, you wiggle the Wii remote back and forth. With how sensitive to motion and positioning the Wiimote is when Link swings his sword, playing the harp by just swinging the Wiimote like a metronome speaks of laziness in design and a missed opportunity for something innovative. Then there's the big bad Girahim. Nintendo, you owe me big time for this one. Ganondorf has developed a decent backstory over the years, his quest to get the Gerudo people out of the desert leading to his descent into evil and corruption after acquiring the power of the Triforce. The Skull Kid was a lonely mischief maker abusing the power of Majora's Mask until the mask tired of him and set about wreaking havoc on its own. But Girahim is a silly, anime, pontificating, mustache-twirling villain who's just evil for the sake of being evil. I wouldn't want you to strain yourselves, Nintendo, but could you at least try for something engaging next time? The conflict between the Gerudo and Hylians established in Ocarina of Time is a goldmine of interesting stories waiting to be told to make the Zelda universe even more compelling. It's not all bad, though. The game is visually gorgeous and makes a nice blend of Wind Waker's cel shading combined with Twilight Princess's more realistic character design. The tone carries a fair amount of light-hearted humor to counter the darkness of the previous game, and the music is appropriately epic and Zelda-y. The remote control Scarab is the exception to the new weapons, and is pleasantly useful and innovative. And the ability to collect components to upgrade weapons, shields, and potions is a neat little money sink that makes Skyloft feel a bit more like an actual town, as well as giving you something to do between temples. At the end of the day, Skyward Sword is still a decent game, as even a bad Zelda game is better than many good games out there, though there are exceptions. And there is fun to be had with this latest Zelda entry, if not as much as prior games. But because of its pedigree, Zelda games are and should be held to a higher standard. And unfortunately, when measured to that standard, this half-assed phone-in of a copy-paste job just flops.
Marvel 進んでるんだ。